Welcome, everyone. We're back here once again with Daniel Santiago, the Vice President of Strategic Engagements at Vantagepoint AI. Daniel, thanks for being with us again. Can you recap for us quickly what we covered in the last conversation, some highlights and some key things that stood out in our first conversation about Vantagepoint?
Yeah, Michael, thank you for having me back. I really appreciate it. It's always a pleasure working with you guys. And last time we talked, we covered where Vantagepoint came from. And that's really key because the artificial intelligence that we've been using in Vantagepoint has been available for traders to invest in and use in their trading since 1991. We talked a little bit about Louis Mendelson, our founder, who started our company back in 1979 using strategy backtesting. And we've just come so far along the way. Michael, one of the key things that I'd love everybody to know is that the technology that we're going to dig into today, what it's doing and how it's doing it is just, it's unavailable anywhere else in the world. We have 2 patents on this technology. And what we're doing here at Vantagepoint is called Intermarket Analysis. And the reason I say it like that is because when you break down what intermarket analysis is, it's the ability to analyze relationships between the markets. You see, Louis Mendelson, when he started this organization, if you guys caught the last clip, when he started this organization, it was back in '87 with Black Monday, when the markets crashed around the world and realized that the markets were global and interconnected back then. When he realized that was the case, that's when he moved away from backtesting into forecasting trends with AI because of those global market relationships. So what I'd like to do today is just dig into what the technology is doing, and how it's doing it, so that the listeners can really understand the real value in using artificial intelligence this way today. I mentioned before too, some of the things that traders are trying to accomplish is to figure out what's going to trend, right? When's it going to trend? The direction, how strong is that trend? Does it have momentum? If you're a swing trader and you're looking for the next best opportunity, answering those few questions can really set you up for success. Well, what we're doing here at Vantagepoint is we're using artificial intelligence to do non-linear pattern recognition of the markets. And what I mean is the AI is able to take in mass amounts of data from around the world, foreign data, domestic data on stocks, on ETFs, on different futures, cryptocurrencies. It takes in data. When you think about currencies like the yen is probably impacting every market around there. Gold, oil, these are nucleus markets that are driving and impacting what we're trading. Well, what the Mendelsons have done with the artificial intelligence is utilize it to take in all of that massive data. We've heard the term big data before. AI has the ability to process millions of data points to figure out what is influencing, what is driving the asset that you're trying to trade, that we can call the target market. Because if you can figure out what is driving what you're trading or looking to trade, then the likelihood that you can figure out where it's going to go is extremely high. Now, we have the ability to forecast trends up to 3 days in advance with up to 87.4% accuracy. Let me show you what I mean. Let me just walk you through the details here so that you get a good understanding of what the AI is doing and how it's doing it. I mentioned the term intermarket analysis, Michael. Let's break down what that really looks like. If you're looking at the screen right now, you'll see that there's 2 charts on the screen, one for AMD and one for the E-mini NASDAQ. Well, when you take a step back, it's kind of obvious, right? That AMD, the price action for AMD is taking the same track at the same time that the NASDAQ is. Or I like to always throw out the other side of things. Maybe the NASDAQ is taking the same track AMD is, right? Regardless of which one you believe is what, they have a parallel relationship, right? That makes sense, Michael, right?
Absolutely. Love that.
Well, if they have a parallel relationship, if they go up at the same time, not exactly at the same time, you can see there's some differences in the price action, but if they go up at the same time, well, if you're going to trade AMD, then it just makes sense. You should probably go take a look at the NASDAQ or vice versa to get that extra step of confirmation. I like to call this a golden nugget because you don't need artificial intelligence to eyeball 2 charts and just look at the price action for 2 charts. Once you know that there's parallel relationships there, you can already enhance what you're doing with your trading. Just realize for a moment that not all all markets just go straight up like the ones we looked at. Here is the XLF ETF, the financial sector ETF, and Bank of America laid on top of each other. A little more volatility, right? But you can see for the most part, when one goes up, the other goes up. When one goes down, the other goes down. There is a parallel relationship here. And I know a lot of options traders that love doing options on Bank of America, right? Whether they're collecting premium or they're trying to do some simple verticals, Bank of America is one of those stocks. Well, if you take a step back, this parallel relationship is obvious. I know that. But I can assure you of the people that I've talked to over the last decade that I've been involved in this artificial intelligence, a lot of those people aren't looking at XLF before they decide to make a trade on Bank of America. Well, XLF is the financial sector ETF. Bank of America is part of that sector. It only makes sense that if I'm going to go risk my hard-earned money on a trade, that I get that extra level of confirmation. Well, this concept is the beginning of what we call intermarket analysis, looking at one market and analyzing that market, and then looking at another one to see if I'm getting the same sentiment, if you will, by looking at that other market. Now, we've talked, Michael, about parallel relationships, but there's also the inverse relationship that's out there. You know, sometimes you hear gold being called the safe haven. And that's because a lot of the times throughout the year when the markets tumble, people turn to gold. That might be cryptocurrency now, but people were turning to gold and they were calling gold the safe haven. Well, that's because they have an inverse relationship. So some of the relationships out there we know are parallel and they're obvious. Some of them are inverse and they're also obvious. But realize one thing. This inverse relationship, it's not the same year round. It's not there year round. Certain parts of the year it's stronger. Sometimes when the market is going up, gold is also going up. And that's where it makes it humanly impossible for this kind of analysis to be done in a way that can create consistency day in and day out. It becomes humanly impossible to get more than one chart laid on top of another chart. And that's where the artificial intelligence excels. Because what I can't do as a human, AI has the ability to do by looking at the data. So what we utilize the AI for is to figure out which markets are driving which markets, the direction they could be pushing that market, because you know S&P could be pushing gold up at different times of the year and pulling it down with it at different times of the year. So we've got to get that directional bias in there as well. And we also have to know the degree of impact, right? AMD may not have a huge impact on the NASDAQ. Bank of America may have a huge impact on XLF. And you see, Michael, when you start to think about, when I start to throw these questions out there, these points out there, it starts to become really hard to really realize how could I use this without the benefit of artificial intelligence, right?
Got it. Yeah.
I mean, when you sit back and think about it, it's like, well, if I was trying to do this at home by myself and figure out which markets are driving which markets, the direction they're going to push those markets, and how strong they could push them, the wheels fall off. And that's where we've applied artificial intelligence. And one of the patents that I spoke about before is on this process called intermarket analysis, literally the process of taking in all of that data, analyzing that data, the open, the high, the low, the close, the volume, the open interest data that's available out there everywhere, using that data to figure out what's influencing what it is you're trying to trade. Because realize one thing, these relationships are there. There's no disputing that. The markets are global and connected. There is no disputing that. Some of the influencing factors you can see, some of them you can't see with the naked eye. I love this picture of the iceberg, Michael, because it reminds me of the Titanic, right? At the time that the Titanic hit the iceberg, they could see the ice that was above the surface. They didn't have the sonar technology to see how big the ice was below the surface. Well, just like with the Titanic, in your trading, those are the relationships. Those are the hidden patterns that can really hurt you, the ones you can't see with the naked eye, the ones that you need special technology like artificial intelligence to see. And that's why this technology has been working so well since 1991. We're talking about over 30 years that traders have been able to apply exactly what I'm talking about from an intermarket analysis standpoint to their trading, because what it's been doing has been proven, it's patented, it's helped a lot of traders be extremely successful, and it's doing it because we know the markets are global. We know the relationships are there. The artificial intelligence is able to work through all of that data and figure out exactly how to use it to determine where those trends are expected to go. All right. And Michael, this is just the input, right? This is the beginning of it. The AI has to pull in all of that data to do the analysis, to do the intermarket analysis, figure out the directional bias, the degree of impact, figure out which markets are impacting which markets. That's like, when I describe that, it's like popping the hood on a car and seeing the engine. That's the engine, that's the patented process. Well, if you're like me, you want the keys to the car. You want to drive that thing. And that's where the second patent comes into play. That's where the ability to forecast trends comes into play, because the engine is powerful. We know that. It's patented, it works. We walk through how it works, so you understand the big picture there. But the real key for traders is how you use it. The key here is, how do I transform all of that data into usable data? And we're going to go into that next. But I want to really quickly give you an image of how this artificial intelligence can work. Let me just change my screen here for a second, and I'm going to go into Vantagepoint software for a moment. And I want to go into it because I'm going to bring up Southwest Airlines really quickly. And I want to show everybody how that intermarket analysis is working. And if you look at the screen right now, you'll see that there's a chart on the screen with Southwest Airlines right in the middle. Well, if you take a step back and you see Southwest Airlines, you can see that this is what we like to call the target market. This is the market that the AI is analyzing to figure out what's influencing it. You would expect Alaska Air, right? You would expect Delta Airlines. You would expect, these are competitors. These are people in the same field. These are companies that do the same thing Southwest does, JetBlue, right? And you can, United Continental, you can look at this list and realize that makes sense, right? Those are surface level relationships. They're in the transportation sector. Well, wouldn't you expect to see the transportation sector in there? Absolutely. See, what the AI has done is it has gone out and analyzed over 10,000 markets around the world and figure out what is influencing Southwest Airlines. And then it's grabbed the top 31 of those markets, let's say. And that's what you're seeing on the screen. Now, where the AI really excels is S&P is in here. Light sweet crude is in here. You think light sweet crude has an impact on airlines, right? The price of fuel, jet fuel. Interest rates are in here. The euro, we talked about that, and the yen, some other currencies. But take a look at this, Caesars Entertainment. This is where you and I would never be able to figure out that Caesars is impacting Southwest Airlines, let alone figure out the degree of impact and the directional bias. That's why this artificial intelligence is so key, because I haven't met a single person that has told me that the markets are not global and are not connected. Every person that I talk to these days tells me that they believe that, they know that, and they want to be able to use that to their advantage. That's what the AI is doing. You can see it on the screen. Look at this one, Boot Barn. What in the world does Boot Barn have to do with Southwest Airlines, or McCormick Spices? What in the world does that have to do with Southwest Airlines? And here's what I have to say. It doesn't matter why it's in there. What matters is that the AI has done the work behind the scenes. It's done the work for you, right? It's analyzed the markets to figure out these relationships. It's figured out how much these relationships are impacting Southwest Airlines. And then the next step that we're going to dig into here momentarily is how those relationships can be utilized to figure out when a stock is expected to start trending up, down, sideways, how strong it's expected to trend, whether it's building momentum or not. And that's really the keys to this, because that's what traders are looking for. If you can tell me when a stock is expected to start trending with, heck, let's call it 80% accuracy, and you can tell me how strong that trend looks to be compared to another one, well, that puts me in the catbird seat, right? That puts me in a position to be handsomely rewarded if I play my cards the right way.
That's great. Amazing run of information there. And I think we got so many good data points out of that. So then let's close it by talking about what you just referenced and digging further into. How exactly does that intermarket analysis help the traders? What's the real value that comes out of this data being pulled in by the AI?
Sure. Yeah. Well, as a trader, understanding what's expected to trend and when it's expecting to trend is key. So the artificial intelligence in the software has the ability to create what's called a predicted moving average. And I'm going to walk through this in the future. We have a little bit more time, but the predicted moving average actually has predictive information in the formula. What I mean is, you see, the AI has done that intermarket analysis, Michael, and it's figured out what's influencing it. It's figured out all of that data, and then it uses that data to predict tomorrow's price, the next day's price, and the price after that. Typical price, an average price. It uses those 3 days of predicted values to create indicators that are no longer lagging indicators. See, the problem with simple moving averages or exponential moving averages or MACD or stochastics, RSI, I can list off lists of indicators. The problem with those indicators is that they lag the market. They ignore the fact that the markets are global and interconnected. Well, by taking the AI, by using the AI to create predictive information and then completely transforming those lagging indicators into market leading indicators, that's where traders get the real information. And that's the second patent that we have, by the way, is actually taking simple indicators or lagging indicators and transforming them with predictive information into predictive market leading indicators. And, I'm excited for when we can dig into that detail a little bit more so that you can understand how you would apply this day in and day out.
Awesome. Cannot believe how much great information we've gotten from you already. 2 episodes in, 2 appearances, and we have gotten a wealth of information looking into the AI software. Daniel Santiago, Vice President of Strategic Engagements at Vantagepoint AI. Daniel, we'll be back with you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.